Tom Bradley wiped the grease from his hands with a class that has seen better days and looked up at the massive viewing screen in the Salvage Station's mine hall. At 67 years old, he is back up from crawling through ship corridors and his eyes need the glasses to read the small print on the repair manuals, but his hands still not their way around any machine that hummed, clicked, or sparked. The Titan's Rest Salvage Station floated in the asteroid field like a metal island in a sea of broken rocks. For 30 years, Tom Akayed displays home, fixing everything that came through with King Bass. Mining ships with busted engines, cargo haulers with falling life support, even the occasional alien craft that Traders brought in from the outer rim. If it had moving parts, Tom could make it work again. The younger crew members often joked that Tom was older than some of the ships repaired, but they still came to him when their fancy dynastic computers gave up. Tom had a way of listening to machines, of feeling their problems through vibrations and sounds that others missed. A good precisely against who Jan knew exactly where the trouble lay, like a doctor checking a heartbeat. Today was different though. The entire station was with excitement over something that had never happened before. Captain Maria Santos stood at the front of the crowded room, her uniform crisp and her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 20 years turning space junk into profit. Behind her, the viewing screen showed an image that made everyone hold their breath. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Santos announced, "We have found something extraordinary." The ship on the screen was like nothing in any database or textbook. It stretched nearly a kilometer from Nose Total. It had a mixture of smooth curves and sharp angles that seemed to flow together like liquid metal frozen in time. Strange crystalline formations hooted from its surface, catching the light of distant stars and throwing it back in colors that are no names. The whole vessel seemed organic somehow, as if it had grown rather than been built. Hake Morrison, the head of the engineering team, whistled low. At 32, Hake was everything Tom was not: young, confident, and quick to embrace new technology. His crew of first-phase mechanics looked up to him like students following a teacher, hanging on his every word about quantum drivers and plasma conduits. "Where did you find her, Captain?" Hake asked, already pulling up specs on his tablet. "Drifting in the outer system, completely dark," Santos replied. "No energy signatures, no response to our house. Whatever civilization built this thing, they were not answering our calls." Tom squinted at the screen, studying the alien vessel with some careful attention against the broken engines. Something about the ship troubled him, though he could not put his finger on what it was. The hood looked pristine from a distance, but there were those irregularities that suggested it was not well. "Initial scans show it's been out there for a long time," Santos continued. "Could be centuries, maybe longer. But the technology appears intact. If we can figure out how it works, this could be the biggest Sci-Fi in company history." The room erupted in excited chatter. Credits danced in everyone's eyes as they mined the fortune waiting inside that mysterious hui. Alien technology always brought top dollar from collectors and researchers, and as cheap this is a call found the station for years. Hake was already organizing his team, assigning different sections of the vessel to various specialists. "We need to set up an goal," he said. "A standard salvage protocol. Document everything, remove anything valuable, and try not to break the important bits." Tom watched a younger man work, noting how Hake approached the alien ship like any other piece of salvage. It was used another hope to him, another puzzle to solve and destroy 4 parts. But something in the ship's design reminded Tom of the old colony vessels from his childhood. Ships built with grand purpose rather than simple function. "Tom, UAV on backup," Hake said without looking up from his tablet. "We need the real engineers on this one." A few people chuckled at that, though not unkindly. Tom had heard variations of that joke for years now. The old mechanic who talked to machines and trusted his instincts over computer readouts. It did not bother him anymore. He had learned long ago that results spoke louder than mockery. Within hours, the fierce shuttle launched from Titan's Rest toward the alien derelict. Tom watched from the observation deck as Jacques Steam approached the massive vessel, their small ship looking like an insect next to as a pink hand. The docking procedure took longer than usual, as they had to find an airlock that could accept their coupling system. Tom's communicator crackled to life as the time had a fierce contact. "We were inside," Jacques' voice reported. "Artificial gravity is still working, and there is atmosphere, though it's a bit stale. This place is inside." Corridors going everywhere, and everything's dark. For the next several hours, reports come back from the boarding party. The ship was in dead, with no power flowing to its main systems. The corridors were filled with dust and debris, suggesting the vessel had been abandoned for a very long time. But the construction was incredible, with materials and techniques that human science could barely understand. There is something strange about the hood oak, one of Jack's engineers reported. It's covered in test metallic fragments, like something was growing on it. They rail over the outside, and some of them seem to be connected by thin filaments. Tom's attention sharpened at that description. He had seen something similar once before, on a trader's ship that had ventured too close to an unexplored nebula. The vessel had been infected by some kind of spaceborne organism that fed on electrical systems, slowly draining the ship's power until it died. Hake, Tom could get into his communicator. Those fragments, though they pulse or glow at all. There was a pause before Jack's irritated voice came back. Tom, we're busy here. Yes, they have a fan light, but it's probably used reflected starlight. We're focusing on the important stuff inside. Tom frowned. If those fragments were what I thought they were, then the ship was not dead at all. It was being slowly consumed by something that fed on advanced technology. He had spent weeks carefully removing similar pieces from that trader's vessel, working with delicate tools and infinite patience to extract a piece without triggering the organism's defenses. But when Tom tried to explain this to Captain Santos, he was more interested in Jack's reports about the advanced materials and the strong power systems they were finding inside the ship. The potential value was enormous, and every hour of the life meant that salvi cruz meet arrive to claim a share of the prize. Tom, I appreciate your experience, Santos said diplomatically, but we have an expert aboard that ship right now. Let them do their hope. So Tom did what he always did when others dismissed his concerns. He prepared his sound shuttle and gathered his tools. If he was right about those fragments, then Tim was running out for the alien vessel. Whatever intelligence built such a beautiful ship deserved better than to be slowly eaten alive while Savage stripped its corpse for profit. The old mechanic checked his equipment one more time, making sure he had everything he needed for delicate work. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, selecting the right tools for extracting parasitic organisms without damaging the host. He had done this kind of work before, though never on anything so large or potentially important. As Tom's shuttle approached the alien ship, it caused the fragments Hake had mentioned. They covered the hood like a rash, a piece pulsing with a sickly light that spoke of hunger and slow death. The filaments connecting them formed a web that spread across the vessel's surface, concentrating around what appeared to be a horse system nodes. Tom docked his shuttle at a maintenance airlock far from where Jack Steam was working. He did not want to interfere with their salvage operation, but I also did not want to waste time arguing about something they could not understand until it was too late. Sometimes the best way to help was to work quietly and let results speak for themselves. The alien ship's corridors were in the dark and dusty, but Tom's experience could see signs of recent activity in the scoop marks and the stair debris. Jack Steam had been zero in their exploration, but they had missed the subtle signs that the ship was not as it appeared. Tom made his way to the outer hull access points, following maintenance passages that reminded him of similar routes on human vessels. Good engineering was universal, it seemed, and whoever had built this ship understood the importance of being able to reach every system for repairs. When Tom finally viewed those inner surface and looked through a viewing port at the fragments outside, he knew he had been right. The metallic pieces were not debris at all, but living organisms that had latched onto the ship's hull and were slowly draining its power systems. Each pulse of their sickly light corresponded to another small shaft of energy from the vessel's core. Tom suited up and cycled through the airlock to begin the long, careful work of removing the parasites one by one. It could take days, maybe weeks, but if it was patient and gentle, it might be able to save this magnificent ship from a slaughter by 1,000 cats. Being him, inside the vessel, Jack Steam continued the salvage work, unaware that the old mechanic they dismissed was fighting to preserve something far more valuable than any technology they might strip from the alien corridors. The fierce fragment came off harder than Tom expected. He had worked with parasitic organisms before, but these were different. The metallic piece was no bigger than his arm, yet it clung to the alien hull with dozens of hurting filaments that sparked when he touched them with his tools. Each filament had to be carefully disconnected, one at a time, while the whole network ghouls and sub-guavs through the ship systems. Tom works slowly in the vacuum of space, his magnetic boots keeping him anchored to the hull while his hands move with the patience of someone who has spent decades coaxing stubborn machines back to life. The work was harder than I'd imagined. Every fragment seemed to know it was trying to remove it and fall back with electrical discharges that made his tools smoke and his sweet systems flicker. Inside the ship, Jacques the Am continued the exploration and cataloging. Their excited voices cracked clear over the communication channels as they discovered room after room of alien technology. Power cores that used principles human science barely understood, control systems that responded to touch and talk, materials that seemed to repair themselves when damaged. This is incredible. Jack's voice echoed through Tom's helmet. We've found what looks like a navigation system that maps the entire galaxy, and there are storage units filled with data crystals. This stuff could advance human technology by centuries. Tom paused in his work to listen, sweat beading on his forehead inside his helmet. It was happy that Jacques Stam was finding valuable things, but their excitement worried him. They were treating the ship like a treasured chest to be emptied rather than a living vessel that needed healing. The power core is massive, another voice reported, but it's completely dead. Whatever happened to this ship, it drained every bit of energy from the mine systems. Tom almost spoke up then, almost explained that the power core was not dead but being slowly consumed by the parasites it was removing. But Enuhake Ghoul dismissed his concerns again, and Darwin Ghoul estimated the ship did not have it. Veterto kept working and let his actions speak for themselves. By the end of the first day, Tom had removed perhaps a dozen fragments from a small section of Hui. His hands acted inside his gloves, and his back protested from hours of careful, precise work. Each piece required 20 or 30 minutes of delicate extraction, and there were thousands more covering the ship's surface. When Tom returned to Titan's Rest that evening, he found the station's mess hall buzzing with excitement about Jacques' discoveries. The younger man held court at the center table, his tablet displaying images of alien technology that made everyone lean forward with hungry eyes. The materials alone are worth a fortune, Jacques announced to his audience. And once we figure out how the power systems work, we could revolutionize space travel. This find is going to make us rich. Lisa Park, one of the station's junior mechanics, noticed Tom entering the mess hall with his tool bag over his shoulder. "Hey Tom, how was your day playing in the vacuum?" A few people chuckled at that, though Lisa meant no harm. Say was one of the few younger crew members who still respected Tom's experience, even if they did not always understand his methods. Productive, Tom replied simply, getting himself a cup of coffee and finding a quiet corner table. Jacques looked over with a smirk. "Still picking at those hood creations. Old man, I told you, it's used space debris. The real treasures are inside the ship." "Those aren't the creations," Tom said quietly. "They were episodes, and they were killing the ship." The conversation around Jacques' table stopped for a moment. Then someone laughed, and the laughter spread until most of the mess hall was chuckling at the old mechanic's wild story. "Tom, I appreciate your imagination," Jacques said with mock seriousness, "but we were on full scans on that shape. It's been there for centuries. There is nothing alive about it except maybe some bacteria in their recycling systems." "Did your scans show you how those fragments are connected to the ship's power grid?" Tom asked. Jacques' smile faltered slightly. "They were used attached to the hull. Probably cosmic debris that got stuck over the years." "Cosmic debris don't pulse with its own light," Tom pointed out, "and it don't fight back when you try to remove it." David Chen, another young mechanic, leaned forward with interest. "Fight back how?" Tom showed them his tools, several of which bore scorch marks from electrical discharges. Each fragment is connected to the others by filaments thinner than human hair. When you disturb one, the whole network responds. They were feeding on the ship's residual power, keeping it used barely alive while they slowly consume everything. The room fell quiet for a moment as people considered this. Then Jacques shook his head dismissively. Even if that were true, which he doubt, it don't change anything. The ship is still a derelict, and we're still here to salvage what we can. Whether it dies slowly or quickly don't matter as long as we get the good stuff out first. Several people nodded at this practical assessment. Salvage crews could not afford to be sentimental about the things they found. Space was full of ships and broken dreams, and those who made a living from the recce learned not to get emotionally attached. But Tom felt differently. In his decades of repair work, he has seen too many good machines here from neglect or delivery destruction. Every vessel had been built with purpose and care, and the H1 deserved a chance to fulfill its function rather than being picked apart like a carcass. What if it could be solved? Tom scared quietly. Hake laughed outright at that. Solved? Tom, that ship has been longer than you've ever been alive. Whatever civilization built it is probably extinct. Even if we could somehow power it up, which we can't, what would be the point? The point would be that it's a living ship, Tom replied. Or was living, before those parasites latched onto it. Something that beautiful and complex haunted use because nobody cares enough to help it. The mess hall erupted in laughter at that. Even Lisa and David, who usually supported Tom, looked embarrassed by his emotional outburst. Space salvage was a business, not a charity for the alien ships. Listen, old-timer, Hake said with exaggerated patience, you know you get attached to the machines you work on. It's sweet? Really? But this isn't some broken mining rig that needs a new motor at the coil. This is a piece of alien technology worth more money than this entire station. We're going to cut it, strip it, and sell it to the highest bidder. That's what salvage crews do. Tom finished his coffee and stood up slowly, his joints protesting after a long day of delicate work. That's what some salvage crews do, he said. Others try to fix things instead of breaking them further. As Tom left the mess hall, a cold heard Jack's voice behind him, addressing his audience with renewed confidence. Poor old Tom. 30 years in space has made him soft in the head. A sinks every broken machine is his personal responsibility to all. Next thing you know, he'll be giving last rites to faulty coffee makers. The laughter followed Tom down the corridor to his quarters, but it did not bother him as much as it once made Dave. He had heard similar jokes for years, and they never changed the fact that his messes worked when others failed. That night, Tom lay in his narrow bunk and thought about the alien's ship floating in the darkness outside. In his mind, a course the parasites pulsing with stolen energy. A ash flash representing another small self from the vessel falling life force. If it was right about their nature, then every day of the alignment the ship grew weaker and harder to save. The next morning, Tom was suited up and ready to return to work while most of the station was still eating breakfast. He had modified some of his tools overnight, adding insulation and surge protection to help deal with the electrical discharges. He had also brought along some specialized equipment normally used for removing organic contamination from ship hulls. As Tom's shuttle approached the alien vessel, a cozy jack stem already aboard, tail lights moving through the transparent sections of the hood like fireflies in a vast cave. They were working with systematic efficiency, documenting and removing anything that looked valuable or technologically advanced. Tom ducked at his usual maintenance look and made his way back to the section of hood where he had been working. The fragments are removed the day before left clay and patches on the otherwise infected surface, like healthy skin shield through garage. But there were still thousands more to go, and the H1 would require some careful attention. The work was even harder on the second day. The parasite seemed to have learned from his previous efforts and fought back more fiercely. Filaments that had been easy to disconnect before and now clung with desperate strength, and the electrical discharges grew stronger and more frequent. Tom's hands were so cut and burned despite his protective gloves. The parasite's defense mechanisms were more sophisticated than I expected, almost as if it possessed some form of collective intelligence. Vare persisted, working with a methodical patience that served him well throughout his long career. By midday, Tom had removed perhaps 20 more fragments, and his tools were smoking from repeated electrical attacks. His suite's power systems flickered occasionally from the parasite's defensive streaks. Vare pressed on, knowing that IP's removal brought the ship one step closer to freedom. Inside his helmet, Tom found himself talking to the alien vessel as it were, the way he often spoke to stubborn machines that needed encouragement. Easy now, and murmured as it were to disconnect a particularly resistant fragment. I know it hurts, but we get these things of you. You stole on a little long hair. The ship, of course, did not respond. But Tom thought he felt something in the way the hubby rattled under his hands, as if the vessel was somehow aware of his efforts and grateful for the help. It was probably used his imagination, but the feeling gave him strength to continue the painful work of healing. 2 weeks had passed since Tom began his lonely work on the alien ship's hood, and the mockery from his fellow crew members had only grown worse. Hake had started recording videos of Tom during his work sessions, capturing moments when the old mechanic spoke softly to the ship or paused to rest his aching hands against the hull. These recordings quickly spread through the station's internet network, becoming a source of entertainment for both salvages. "Look at this one," Hake announced during the evening meal, holding up his tablet for everyone to see. The screen showed Tom carefully working around a cluster of fragments near what appeared to be a sensor array. Sven talking to his imaginary alien friend for 20 minutes. "I think space madness is finally getting to old Tom." The mess hall erupted in laughter as people watched Tom's lips moving inside his helmet, apparently having a one-sided conversation with the ship. Someone added subtitles to the video. "Don't worry, where you get you fixed up and you stole still, this won't hurt much." Tom sat at his usual corner table, eating his dinner in silence while the jokes continued around him. His hands were bandaged from the latest electrical burns, and his shoulders ached from days of precise work in the cramped confines of his spacesuit. Vade did not let the laughter bother him. He had removed nearly 300 fragments now, and a cold filled the ship responding to his efforts in what the others could not detect. Lisa Parker approached his tablet with a concerned expression, glancing back at Jack's group before sitting down across from Tom. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "Man, really okay? Some of the crew are starting to worry about you." Tom looked up from his meal, his tired eyes meeting hers. "I'm fine, Lisa. The work is hard, but it's necessary." "But Tom, it's been 2 weeks and the ship is still completely dead. Jack has scattered most of the valuable technology, and Captain Santos is talking about moving on to the next salvage site. Maybe it's time to accept that some things can be fixed." Tom set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. "You know what he found yesterday? A section of wood where the parasites had been feeding for so long that they actually started to bore through the outer plating. Another few months and they could overreach the ship's main power conduits. If that happens, there won't be anything left to salvage." Lisa frowned. "You kept calling them parasites, but Hake says they reuse metallic debris that got fused to the hull over time." "Hake says a lot of things," Tom replied. "But Hake hasn't spent 30 years learning to listen to what machines are trying to tell him. Those fragments are alive, Lisa, and they're slowly killing that ship." Before Lisa could respond, Captain Santos entered the mess hall and made her way to Jack's table. Her expression was serious, and the laughter died down as I began to speak. "If you received word from the Galactic Salvage Authority," Santos announced said. "They were sending a research team to examine our find. They will be here in 5 days, and they want a complete inventory of everything we've discovered." Hake grinned widely. "That's fantastic news, Captain. We've found the no alien technology to keep their scientists busy for years. The energy crystals alone are unlike anything in the databases. There is more," Santos continued. "If the authorities' evaluation confirms the ship's value, they were prepared to offer us a finder's fee that would set this station up for the next decade. But they want the vessel intact and ready for transport to their reserve facilities." Tom felt his heart sing at those words. Transport to reserve facilities meant the ship would be completely dismantled. Every component started and cuttled until nothing remained but data files and spare parts. It was the opposite of the healing the vessel desperately needed. "Captain," Tom said, standing up from his table, "I need to tell you something important about that ship." Santos turned to look at him with barely concealed impatience. "Tom, I appreciate your dedication, but we're dealing with the biggest find in company history here. Whatever concerns you about hood maintenance can wait." "It's not hood maintenance," Tom insisted. "The ship isn't dead. It's being slowly consumed by parasitic organisms that have been feeding on its power system for centuries. If we can remove them all, the ship may actually come back to life." The mess hall fell completely silent. Then Hake started laughing, and some of the room was chuckling at what they saw as old mechanic's latest delusion. "Tom, please," Santos said with forced patience. "I know you mean well, but our sensors show no life signs on that vessel. It's been there for long here, that human civilization has existed. You're seeing patterns that aren't there." "Then explain this," Tom said, pulling out his own tablet and showing footage he recorded during his work. The screen displayed a time-lapse video of a section of wood where it had removed several clusters of fragments. As each parasite was extracted, the surrounding area seemed to grow slightly brighter, as if some internal light was beginning to shine through the metal. Several people leaned forward to get a better look, including Lisa and David Chen. The footage was utterly but undeniable. Something was definitely changing in the areas where Tom had been working. Haki examined the video with a frown. It's probably used reflected light from your work lamps. Metal surfaces can play tricks on cameras, especially in vacuum conditions. Those changes happened hours after he finished working on each section, Tom replied, and my work lamps were off. Something inside the ship is responding to the parasite removal. Captain Santos studied the footage for a long moment, then shook her head. Even if that's true, it doesn't change our situation. We have 5 days to prepare this file for authority evaluation. It can't risk our finders' fee on speculation about alien life signs. But Captain, Tom pressed, what if I'm right? What if we could actually restore the ship to working condition? Wouldn't that be worth more than you selling the parts? It would also be worth exactly nothing if we were wrong and ended up with a pile of damaged alien scrap, Santos replied firmly. Tom, I'm ordering you to stop this parasite hunting and help Jackson with the real salvage work. We need every available hand for the authorities' visit. Tom felt the weight of defeat settling on his shoulders. After 2 weeks of backbreaking work, it was being ordered to abandon the ship use when it was beginning to make real progress. The parasites in the areas it cleared were definitely weakening, and they started to detect fan energy readings from the ship's core systems. I understand, Captain, Tom said quietly. Varas left the mess hall. Tom had no intention of following orders that would doom the alien vessel to a slow death. He had come too far and sacrificed too much to give up now. If the ship could be saved, he would find a way to save it, even if it would work alone and in secret. That night, Tom gathered his tools and prepared for what might be his final opportunity to complete the work he had started. He had identified the ship's central power no weeks ago, a large crystalline formation near the vessel's air that was covered with the largest concentration of parasites. If it could clear that area completely, it might trigger a cascade effect that would allow the ship's systems to pair the remaining organisms on teardown. The work would be dangerous and exhausting, requiring him to remove dozens of the most deeply embedded fragments in a single session. The electrical discharges would be stronger near the power core, and an mistake could trigger a feedback loop that may kill both him and the ship. That was the only chance left. Tom launched his shuttle in the pre-dawn hours when most of the station was asleep. He had disabled his communication beacon to avoid being tracked, and had enough supplies to work for 12 hours straight if necessary. If Captain Santos wanted to stop him, she would have to send security to drag him away from the ship. As Tom approached the alien vessel in the darkness, he noticed something that made his heart race with excitement. The areas where he had been working over the past 2 weeks were definitely glowing now, pulsing with a soft light that seemed to come from deep within the hood. The ship was not dead after all. It was sleeping, waiting for someone to free from the parasites that kept it trapped in darkness. Tom ducked at his usual airlock and made his way through the ship's corridors to the central power core. The chamber was vast and cathedral-like, with a crystalline formation rising from the floor like a frozen waterfall. But the beautiful structure was almost completely covered with parasites, the sickly light creating an infection that passed through the crystal matrix. This was the heart of the alien ship, and it was dying. Tom suited up and stepped outside onto the hood surrounding the power core. The parasites here were different from the others he encountered, larger, more deeply embedded, and connected by thick bundles of filaments that carried massive amounts of stolen energy. Removing them would require every skill he had learned in 30 years of delicate repair work. A vegan with the smallest fragments at the edges, working his way slowly toward the central cluster that covered the crystal's primary facets. Each parasite fought back with increasing desperation as he approached the core, as if they sensed that their false souls was about to be taken away. Tom's hands were soon bleeding inside his gloves from the electrical burns, and his sweet systems flickered constantly from the parasite's defensive streaks. But he pressed on, driven by a certainty that had grown stronger with every fragment removed. This ship wanted to live, and it was the only one who could help it. As Tom carefully extracted the final cluster of parasites from the crystal central node, something extraordinary happened. The alien power core suddenly flared with brilliant light, sending waves of energy cascading through the ship systems. Emergency lights flickered on throughout the vessel, and the harmonic vibration began to emanate from the HFY itself. Tom felt the shapes shatter beneath his feet as systems that have been dormant for centuries began to wake up. The crystalline formation pulsed with renewed life, and the organic sections of the HFY started to glow with their own internal light. After 2 weeks of patient work, the alien vessel was finally free to life again. The moment the final parasite came free from the crystal core, Tom felt the alien's ship come alive beneath his feet like a sleeping giant awakening from a long dream. The harmonic vibration that began as a whisper grew into the sound that resonated through his bones, and the HFY plating beneath his magnetic boots glowed with returning life. Emergency lights blast to life along the ship's corridors, casting moving shadows through the transparent sections of the HFY. The crystalline formations that have been dark and lifeless for centuries now pulsed with rainbow colors that shifted and flew like aurora displays. Most incredible of all, the organic sections of the vessel began to glow with their own soft bioluminescence, as if the ship itself was breathing light. Tom pressed his gloved hand against the HFY near the power core and felt a gentle vibration, like a heartbeat returning to a body that had been clinically dead. After 2 weeks of patient work, he had given this magnificent vessel a chance to life again. But his moment of triumph was interrupted by urgent voices crackling through his communication system. Back on Titan's rest, every sensor alarm was screaming as the previously dead alien ship suddenly blasted with energy signatures that registered of their monitoring equipment. What the hell is happening out there? Captain Santos, voice cut through the static. Our sensors are streaming massive power fluctuations from the derelict. Hake, get your team out of that ship immediately. Tom could hear the panic in Jack's voice as he responded from somewhere inside the vessel. Captain, we're trying, but something's wrong with the airlocks. They were working fine a minute ago, but now they were still tight, and the corridors are lighting up like a Christmas tree. Tom? Santos' voice carried a note of suspicion. Tom, are you monitoring this channel? Where are you? Tom keyed his communicator with reluctance. He had hoped to have more time to observe the ship's awakening process, but the commotion from the station meant his secret work was no longer secret. I'm here, Captain, Tom replied. I'm on the HFY near the central power core. Get back to the station immediately, Santos ordered. Whatever you were doing out there, you might have triggered some kind of automatic defense system. The ship could be dangerous. But as Tom prepared to comply with the order, something extraordinary happened. A new voice joined the communication channel, speaking in clear and unaccented that seemed to come from the ship itself. Tom Bradley, the voice said, neither clearly male nor female but carrying harmonics that suggested multiple vocal cords working together. Tom Bradley offers. Please do not leave yet. I have been wanting to speak with you. The communication channel fell completely silent. Even the background static seemed to pause as everyone tried to process what they had just heard. An alien ship, supposedly the 4th centuries, had just spoken a human name in perfect English. Tom felt his knees go weak inside his suit. After 30 years of talking to machines and listening to their responses through vibrations and sounds, a machine was finally talking back to him words he could understand. Who are you? Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I am the vessel you call a derelict, the ship replied, its voice carrying warmth and gratitude. My designation in your language would be Harmony of Stars. For 847 of your years, I have drifted in darkness while the parasite you removed fed upon my essence. Captain Santos found her voice fierce among the stunned humans listening to this impossible conversation. This is Captain Maria Santos of the Sci-Fi vessel Titan's Rest. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Captain Santos, the ship acknowledged with what sounded like amusement. Your crew has been aboard me for many days, cataloging my systems and removing components they deemed valuable. I was aware of their presence but unable to respond while the parasites maintained their hold on my power matrix. Jack's voice cut through the communication channel with a mixture of fear and disbelief. That's impossible. Orcs can show no signs of consciousness or artificial intelligence. You were completely dead. Not dead. Engineer Morrison, Harmony of Star replied, somehow knowing Jack's name despite never having been introduced. merely imprisoned by creatures that feed on advanced technology. They kept me alive but helpless, like a patient in your medical facilities who is conscious but unable to move or speak. Tom found his voice again, though his hands were shaking with excitement and exhaustion. How long were you trapped like that? Time as little, meaning when you cannot act or dream, the ship replied. Vari calculated it has been approximately 8.5 centuries since the parasite spheres attached to my hood. It was exploring the system when they swarmed from the asteroid fields, too many and too fast for my defenses to repel. The reality of what Tom had accomplished had begun to sink in. He had not used repair a broken machine or restored the ship to function. He had freed a conscious being from centuries of imprisonment and slowed the art. Many ships found me during my captivity. Harmony of Stars continued. Many crews boarded me and explored my corridors. I sought to take from me what little remained. Only you, Tom Bradley, sought to aid rather than harvest. Captain Santos broke in with a question that Tom could hear trembling with greed and passivity. What are you exactly? What civilization built you? It was created by to you the Orcs, the ship replied. They were an ancient race that seeded this galaxy with vessels like myself, designed to seek out and evaluate younger civilizations. Each ship was programmed to find individuals who demonstrated the core values my creators praise: curiosity, patience, and the wisdom to repair rather than destroy. Tom pressed his hand against the hood again, feeling the gentle vibration that had become stronger and more rhythmic as the ship systems came fully online. What were you supposed to evaluate about us? Whether your species possessed the empathy to help others without thought of reward, Harmony of Stars answered. Whether you could look upon something dancing not savvy to be stripped but life to be preserved. My creators believe such compassion was the rarest force in the universe. Jack's voice carried a note of desperate confusion. But we were helping. We were cataloging your technology, trying to understand how you work. That's valuable research. You were conducting an autopsy on a living being, the ship replied without anger. Taking pieces of me to study while it was unable to consent or resist. Tom Bradley alone recognized that it was suffering and worked to end that suffering rather than profit from it. The communication channel buzzed with overlapping voices as the crew of Titans tried to process the implications of what they were hearing. This was no longer a simple salvage operation. They had encountered a living alien intelligence, and their actions over the past weeks had been witnessed and judged. Tom felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened. He simply decided to help a machine in distress and led to fierce contact with an alien consciousness that had been observing humanity through their treatment of what they thought was the ship. What happens now? Tom asked. That depends on what you choose. Tom Bradley, Harmony of Stars replied. It can offer you knowledge of technologies your species has never imagined. It can take you to worlds where the architects left treasures of science and philosophy beyond your current understanding. Or it can remain here and serve as an ambassador between your people and the civilizations you will eventually encounter among the stars. Tom looked back toward Titan's rest, visible as a distant point of light against the asteroid field. He thought about his small quarters, his workshop full of broken machines, and the 30 years he had spent bringing the things back to life in the cold vacuum of space. I'm honored by your offer, Tom said slowly, but I'm used a mechanic. If fix things because they need fixing, not because they expect anything in return. That is precisely why you are worthy of the choice, the shape replied. The architects understood that the greatest treasures in the universe revealed themselves only to those who would serve them rather than possess them. Captain Santos interrupted with barely controlled urgency. Tom, think about what this means. This chip could revolutionize human technology, open up new trade routes, advance our civilization by thousands of years. We need to contact us immediately. Captain Santos, Harmony of Stars gently. Your species will in the advance and grow among the stars, but not through taking what belongs to others. Tom Bradley has shown me that humanity possesses a wisdom to earn such advancement through compassion and service. Tom felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. Everything he had ever dreamed about space exploration and alien contact was being offered to him freely. But he also thought about the broken machines still waiting for repair, and the people who dismissed all wisdom in favor of new profits. Can you think about it? Tom asked. Of course, the ship replied with warmth. But perhaps you would like to see what you have truly accomplished first. The hull beneath Tom's feet began to glow more brightly, and he realized the coals into the ship's interior through sections that have become transparent. Throughout the vast corridors and chambers, systems were coming online in cascading webs of light and activity. The vessel was not used alive but actively healing itself, repairing damage that had accumulated over centuries of parasitic infection. It was the most beautiful thing Tom had ever seen, and it made it possible through nothing more than patience, empathy, and the simple belief that every machine deserved a chance to fulfill its purpose. The ship that had been dismissed as worthless young was transforming itself into something magnificent, and Tom Bradley, the old mechanic who talked to machines, had given it the gift of life. Tom floated in the silence of space, watching the alien ship transform itself before his eyes. The vessel that had been dark and lifeless used us before now pales with brilliant colors that flow along its hull like rivers of liquid light. The crystalline formations had grown brighter and more complex, creating patterns that seemed to tell stories in languages it could not read but somehow understood. Tom Bradley, Harmony of Stars, spoke again, its voice filling his helmet with worms. Would you like to come and see and see what you have in store? Tom looked back toward Titan's Rest, where he could see the lights of shuttle preparing to launch. Captain Santos would be organizing a full response attempt now that sign of the ship was alive and potentially valuable beyond imagination. Hackett would be leading the technical specialists, ready to study and cattle this miraculous discovery. What about Jack Stam? Tom asked. Are they safe in situ? They are unharmed, the ship replied. Yave opened the airlocks and provided them with a safe pass back to the shuttle. They were frightened when my systems activated, but they took nothing that belonged to me and meant no deliberate harm. Tom made his way to the nearest airlock, his movement slow and careful after the exhausting work of removing the final parasites. His hands still ached from the electrical burns, and his whole body protested every movement, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. The interior of Harmony of Stars had transformed as completely as its exterior. Corridors that had been dark and dusty now grew with soft bioluminescence, and their hum with the quiet efficiency of systems working in perfect harmony. The walls seemed almost alive, with patterns of light flowing beneath their surfaces like veins carrying energy instead of blood. This is incredible, Tom whispered as he walked through passages that adjusted their lighting to match his pace. This is how it was meant to be, the ship replied. For 8 centuries, he dreamed of feeling whole again. You have given me back not use my function but my purpose. Tom found himself in a vast chamber that seemed to serve as the ship's central nervous system. Streams of data flowed through transparent conduits overhead, and holographic displays showed the star maps and information in scripts it could not read. At the center of it stood a column of pure crystal that pulsed with the same rhythm as a heartbeat. My creator designed me to be more than use as ship. Harmony of Stars explained as Tom approved the crystal column. I am a living library, carrying the knowledge and wisdom of civilizations that have passed beyond the need for physical form. But more than that, I am a teacher and a friend to those who prove themselves worthy of such gifts. Tom placed his hand on the crystal surface and felt a gentle vibration that seemed to resonate with his own heartbeat. What did your creators want you to teach? That the greatest strength in the universe is not the power to take but the wisdom to give, the ship replied. That civilizations are measured not by what they can destroy but by what they choose to preserve. You have demonstrated both qualities in your treatment of me. The sound of approaching shuttles echoed through the ship's hood, and Tom knew that his way moment with Harmony of Stars was about to end. Captain Santos and her teams would board the vessel with scanners and recording equipment, ready to document every detail of his unprecedented discovery. They were coming, Tom said unnecessarily. Yes, the ship agreed. Captain Santos brings up unfair in equal measure. Seizes opportunity but also danger in what it represents. Hackett more reason brings curiosity tempered by caution. He has learned something today about the difference between understanding and exploitation. Tom smiled at the ship's gentle assessment of his colleagues. Even now, Harmony of Stars shows to see the best in those who are treated as a rather than as a living being. What will you tell them? Tom asked. The truth, the ship replied. That your species has passed the first test of wisdom by producing individuals like you who choose compassion over profit. But that greater challenge is what as humanity ventures further into the galaxy. The airlocks are equal open, and Captain Santos enter with Hake and a team of specialists. Their faces saw the mystery of wonder and apprehension as they took in the ship's transformed interior. The vessel that had been a dark maze used or before and now welcomed them with gentle lighting and breathable atmosphere. "Welcome aboard, Captain Santos," Harmony of Stars said, its voice echoing from speakers throughout the chamber. "Welcome, Engineer Morrison and your colleagues. Please do not be afraid. It may have no harm to you or your people." Santos stepped forward with a bearing of someone accustomed to command, but Tom caused the uncertainty in her eyes. "We need to understand what you are and what you want from us. I want nothing from you that you are not freely willing to give," the ship replied. "I am Harmony of Stars, created by the architects to seek out wisdom among the younger races. Tom Bradley has shown me that humanity possesses such wisdom." Hake looked around the transformed chamber with obvious amazement. "The technology here is beyond anything we've ever seen. The power systems alone could revolutionize our civilization. Would you be willing to share this knowledge?" "Knowledge shared freely as value," Harmony of Stars replied. "Knowledge taken by force becomes worthless. The choice of what to share and when must be meant to make." Tom watched the interaction between his colleagues and the alien intelligence, noting how carefully Harmony of Stars chose its words. The ship was clearly far more advanced than anything humanity had encountered, but it approved them as equals rather than inferiors. "What would you propose?" Santos asked. "I propose to remain here, in this system, and serve as a bridge between your people and the civilizations you will encounter as expand among the stars," the ship said. "I can teach your engineers to build better ships and your scientists to understand principles they have only serious about. But it will do so gradually, as your species proves ready for such advancement." Tom felt the mystery of pride and disappointment at this decision. Part of him had hoped Harmony of Stars would invite him to journey to the mysterious worlds of the architects, to see wonders beyond human imagination. But he also understood the wisdom in the ship's choice to remain and serve as humanity's teacher and guide. "And what about Tom?" Santos asked, glancing at the old mechanic who had made this miracle possible. "Tom Bradley will always be welcome aboard me," Harmony of Stars replied. "He has earned the right to learn whatever he wishes to know and to go wherever he wishes to travel. But I suspect he will choose to remain here, continuing the work he has always done." Allies turned to Tom, waiting for his response to this unprecedented offer. He could travel to alien worlds, learn technologies that could make him the most knowledgeable human in existence, experience wonders that few beings in the galaxy had ever seen. Tom looked around the chamber at his colleagues, then at the flowing patterns of light that represented Harmony of Stars in its full glory. After a long moment, he smiled. "I appreciate the offer," Tom said quietly, "but I am happy doing what I've always done. There are plenty of broken things right here that need fixing." The ship's laughter was like music, carrying harmonics that spoke of joy and understanding. "I hope you would say that, Tom Bradley. The galaxy has many teachers of technology and philosophy, but few who understand that the greatest wisdom lies in knowing when to stay and serve rather than when to live and explore." Hake shook his head in amazement. "Tom, do you realize what you're returning down? You could learn secrets that could advance human knowledge by thousands of years." "Maybe," Tom replied, "but what good would that knowledge do if I kept it to myself? Better to stay here and help Harmony of Stars teach all of us to be there." Captain Santos studied Tom for a long moment, then nodded with something that looked like respect. "What would you propose for the station's future?" Tom looked at Harmony of Stars, crystal-clear, feeling the gentle vibration that had become as familiar as his own pulse. "I think we should turn Titan's Rest into something new. Not use a salvage station, but a place where broken things come to be healed instead of stripped for parts. Harmony of Stars could teach us how to repair ships we never thought could be fixed, and maybe teach us something about fixing other problems too." The ship's voice carried warm approval. "A hospital for wounded vessels, staffed by mechanics who understand that every machine deserves a chance to fulfill its purpose. I can't think of no better use for the knowledge I carry." Over the following weeks, Titan's Rest transformed from a salvage operation into something entirely new. Ships that had been destined for the scrapyards arrived to be healed by techniques that Harmony of Stars taught to Tom and his green team of students. Hake, Humbled by his experience with the alien intelligence, became one of Tom's most dedicated pupils in the art of mechanical empathy. Visitors come from across human space to witness the miracle of the talking ship and the old mechanic who was savvy. But Tom remained focused on the work that had always fulfilled him, teaching others to listen to what broken machines were trying to tell them. In the evenings, after the day's repairs were done, Tom would sit in Harmony of Stars, central chamber and share stories of his 80 years among the machines of space. The ship would respond with tales of the civilizations it had encountered and the wisdom it had gathered in its centuries of exploration. They were an unlikely pair, an inhuman mechanic and an ancient alien intelligence, but they had found in Asho the perfect partnership. Tom had given Harmony of Stars freedom from its own captivity, and the ship had given Tom something he had never expected. Proof that his lifetime of caring for broken things had been the most important work in the galaxy. The old mechanic who had been mad for talking to machines had found when that cove finally talked back, and together they had shown the universe that the greatest treasures come not to those who will possess them, but to those who will serve them with patience, wisdom, and love.